Bible as you know it was really a manipulated manuscript to keep the world under a constant spell or curse. While many people look to the Bible for hope, faith, or direction, its very purpose was to control, manipulate, and keep entire generations from ever rebelling against an elite class of religious and political movements and leaders. Hi, I'm Christine Fleming. This channel, The Reverse Curse, was built to help you escape that cruel and vindictive way of living, thinking, and judging the world by. Because let's face it, this book has caused more division, more wars, and more hate than any other world ideology. It's the one thing that gives certain groups of people divine control over your thoughts and the way you live. It's not freedom the way Jesus intended it to be. It's a trap into a prison that keeps you in constant fear and frustration, spinning your wheels desperately, trying to please a God that can never, ever be pleased. If you're going through an awakening or wanting to know the truth of who Jesus is and was, then please click the subscribe button. I'm a brand new channel exposing the curse we're currently under called Christianity. If you have questions about the authenticity of the Bible, then this is where you want to be for the answers. These videos are meaty and jam-packed with crucial content to reverse the curse. I know this channel is controversial and will receive a lot of hate and judgment from Christians, which is why your love and support can truly help me expose this curse and help others break it in their own lives. Please also join the conversation below in the comment sections. Maybe your question will be featured on one of my future episodes. We've been told that the supposed Word of God could never be altered because it's infallible. It's perfect. It's divine authority, direct from God Himself. How is that possible if the Pharisee Jews rewrote the Old Testament in 90 AD at the Council of Jamnia after the temple was destroyed and their entire ways of worship through blood sacrifices were put to an end? This council literally rewrote and recreated a new God and new Messiah because more and more Jews were beginning to follow what was called the way, following the Christ consciousness. Before the rewrite, the entity they saw as divine and good, the divine source the Lemurians desperately tried to keep intact before the flood, was referred to as the Echad. This meant one whole unit or family. Think collective consciousness. It was how the world literally operated before the Lemurians split into two different camps. Watch this video here to learn more about that. The Echad was removed and replaced with an angry, jealous, vindictive god, the Yachid. While this word still meant one, it didn't mean a whole, but rather just a singular deity demanding devotion. The Echad didn't need to be worshipped or feared because it was you. You were within the Echad. The Echad was in you, just the way Jesus said. He came to remind us of the Echad, and the Pharisee Jews could no longer have that. So they removed the beautiful essence of the Echad and designed a new God for you to worship, one that demands blood sacrifices, unadulterated worship, and rules with anger and threats of eternal damnation if you didn't give your own life over to it. I believe many Christians question these things in their hearts, but that fear overrules their ability to speak it out loud. And if it is in their hearts or their minds, they feel guilty or remorseful, even sinful, for thinking such blasphemy. You will hear me talk about the Echad and the Yachid often because they are keys to true freedom and understanding. How is this book the Word of God when countless political leaders, mostly rich white dudes in robes and crowns, decided at the Nicene Council what books would be included. Some of the most controversial yet factual books were discredited and deemed harmful to the church and its authority. The Nag Hammadi texts, while not written directly by their namesake book titles, carried a lineage of oral and written stories from the direct followers of Jesus. They make the very claim I make here today, that Jesus was never a blood sacrifice, never died for anyone's sins, and dare I say it, never resurrected. Not in the way we've been told. Now, this alone got people brutally killed. And even today, most Christians hear this and immediately insist you're an agent of evil, working directly with Satan himself. I know, because I was one of those Christians. Well, I won't spend too much time in this video talking about the Nag Hammadi text. I will tell you this. Jesus was a real person who went through immense self-training to reach his higher consciousness, to reveal to the world that you too can have direct access to and power through the divine source, the Echad. See, Jesus knew the Echad. The Jews did too, but they were no longer living in the collective. They chose rules and laws created by elite power figures on earth rather than living in harmony and balance with one another the way they had before the flood. The people were forced into confinement and rules that were near impossible to live up to. And Jesus, as a human man, was able to tap back into the Echad. This idea of Jesus being a human man and not the only begotten Son sent shivers down the spines of church leaders. How could they maintain control, collect tithes, and keep mankind in constant fear if anyone and everyone could be just like Jesus, tapping into direct access to the divine source? So out went the real Jesus and insert the blood sacrifice for your inability to be perfect. One other crucial evidence of erasure and rewriting came when the Greeks couldn't translate Aramaic and created their own theology of what they thought Jesus may have said or implied. A perfect example of that is the very idea of hell. When Jesus spoke of hell, he wasn't painting a picture of an evil underworld with demons and Satan. He was using a literal local landmark that his followers walked past every single day. He was referring to the Valley of Hinnom, or Gehinnom in Hebrew, which sat just outside the southwest walls of Jerusalem. It was the city's literal smoking public garbage dump, a massive ravine where garbage, animal carcasses, and even the bodies of executed criminals deemed unworthy of a proper burial were thrown. To keep the rotting filth from causing a plague, fires were kept burning there constantly, day and night. So when he warned people about their lives ending up in Gehenna, his audience heard, if you keep running this corrupted, self-destructive software loop, you are turning your life into absolute trash and throwing it straight into a burning dump. It was a blatant metaphor for a totally wasted existence. These are just 3 examples of how the Bible has never been about real freedom or salvation, but rather a clever way of keeping a 2000 curse alive in the DNA of mankind. The generational curse is on everyone claiming this book is your only way to heaven, a heaven they also created for a God that will require your constant worship and attention. This curse was hidden by the Catholic Church, the Jewish collaborators at Jamnia and Nicaea, and even one of the most popular writers of the New Testament, Paul, Saul of Tarsus. King Josiah, according to 2 Kings 22, accidentally found the lost book of Deuteronomy buried in the walls of the temple. He then used this book to force people to worship at one centralized place, the temple in Jerusalem. It was also used to purge the Lemurians, or the shamans, from this new world they were creating through control and fear. He built a high wall, tore down the stone altars, and executed those who had direct access to the divine. He then made it a crime to offer sacrifices anywhere else, forcing an entire population to travel to Jerusalem to pay tithes, dues, and taxes to his kingship. He also erased one of the most crucial aspects of the Echad, eliminating the divine feminine, Asherah, who many Bible readers believe was a demonic entity, referred to as a wooden pole. Asherah was associated with the tree of life. Josiah literally dragged the Asherah out of the temple, burned it, and ground it to dust. The books of Joshua, Judges, Samuel, and Kings were then heavily redacted, worse than the Epstein files, in order to exalt earthly kings and their made-up religion. The original texts were historical accounts of planetary grids, mystical connections, and the divine source. You may be wondering what this has to do with Paul, right? Well, Josiah set the stage for the rigid laws and punishments, the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin Jews, who were leaders and authorities of those laws, and Paul. Now, don't get me wrong. Like many Christians today who encountered that same awakening Paul did on the road to Damascus, Paul began to skew and mislead others to his own views of who Jesus was and why he came. It's imperative to understand that this kind of awakening that many of us go through with the Christ consciousness gets scooped up by the church as being born again. But this biblical misunderstanding is exactly what keeps generations under Paul's curse of Christ. Paul, realizing Jesus was also a Jew, put his own legalities and laws back into the awakening, therefore slamming the door on the direct line to the divine and back to the Jewish traditions of their laws and false narrative of who God is. This was a huge disservice to the true followers of Christ. You know, the ones who walked and talked with him on a daily basis. Paul just had an awakening. Jesus' followers were there. Jesus taught them, gave them the tools to practice engaging and reaching a higher consciousness to the divine source, the Echad, and was able to now reach us through these divine lights of utter awakening. Yet, Paul insisted he knew better, knew more, and knew Jesus more intimately than they did. And this was a major source of conflict between the two faiths. Jesus' followers never referred to themselves as Christians. They were known as the Way, or the Nazarenes. This movement was led by Jesus' brother, James the Just, along with Peter, John, and Mary. This was a group of tight-knit, deeply observant mystics. They kept the traditional customs, frequented the temple, and viewed Yeshua's teachings as the hidden spiritual crown of their ancestral lineage. Paul, on the other hand, bypassed the human chain of command entirely. He doesn't go to Jerusalem to learn from Peter or James about who Jesus really was or what he taught them. Instead, he took off to Greco-Roman world and started pitching a radically altered version of the truth that fit his own religious beliefs, planting Pharisee Jewish ideology onto the world. James and the crew got into an openly heated debate with Paul, who was rebelling against them in his own religious fervor. In Galatians 2, Paul brags about his argument with Peter and proceeds to call him a hypocrite. Very Christianese, if you ask me. We took on his mantle well, didn't we? Paul had the audacity to claim that the man who walked on water with Jesus didn't quite get the memo on the true mission. But here's the thing. Paul was a master marketer. His message made it easy to scale across the Roman Empire to build his own massive network of corporate churches. He collected tithes and systematically outvoted, outfunded, and outnumbered the original followers. So when the Pharisee Jews got together in Jamnia, they removed the original followers' accounts along with James's direct historical footprint and leadership and scattered the way out of the way. Paul's version would then dominate those he pushed under the bus. Their truth would also then be removed and rewritten. Paul's version fit the Greco-Roman Empire's need to dismantle the way once and for all. They didn't really care, but they knew that if Paul could convince the masses of his version of reality of sin and salvation, they could use that very idea to get the masses to submit to their authority. It was fear tactics of eternal damnation if you didn't follow Christ and those whom Christ put in power. Thus, give Caesar what Caesar is owed. Christianity became the biggest scam in building the planet's biggest religious monopoly. These kings and political leaders, along with the legalistic rule makers and politicians, ate up Paul's wild version of Jesus and used it for their monetary and legal control over the masses. They still do. Only today, many Christians never knew the truth of this story, so they get trapped under the curse. And the most horrific part of that is they made you believe it's the ultimate truth of God, a Jewish God, not a universal God, not a God for everyone, but only one group of people. And if you are a Christian, you are bound to them and their destructive ideology and view of God. Even though you think you're not, once you remove yourself from these stories and begin to see it for what it really is, control, you can never see it any other way again than the curse it truly is. That curse is sitting in the glaring light of the world we live in today. Once again, I am a small, itty-bitty, brand new channel. Please feel free to subscribe below. I would love for you to follow along if you enjoy these topics and stories. I would greatly appreciate your support. Thank you again for watching. I'll see you in the next video. I'm going to talk more about hell. Yeah, that's a fun topic. See you then.